Welcome back, Inebri-art. This is Andy, as always. And today we're actually joined by an actor. We've had quite a few actors on recently, so we're on a pretty good streak there. And this particular actor, you guys should know him. He's been on Independence Day, Donnie Darko, Frank the Bunny himself, James Duval. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Andy. Thank you for having me. It's good to see everybody. How are you all doing out there?
So you have kind of this credit of Donnie Darko, and I'm not going to lie, I've seen it, but in preparation for this, I'm kind of like, I remember it being weird, but I don't remember fully what happened. I had to go back and like reread the synopsis. When you signed up for that, what were you thinking like when you read that script? Because it is a bizarre movie.
It really is. Well, there was a couple things that went through my head. One, I had to go back and forth before I could even get to the end, just to understand what I was, as with the script, you can do that. Not so easily when you're watching a movie. I guess you could, if it's on DVD, go back and forth, but generally you just watch it all the way through. And so as I was reading it, trying to understand, I had to go back and forth. But one thing that caught me from the get-go was I grew up loving the original Rod Serling Twilight Zones.
Mm-hmm.
It tapped into that unknowing, that something into that Twilight Zone, inside of myself. And I liked the later ones, in the 80s and the movies that came out, but I've always felt that they didn't quite have that panache, that oomph, or that certain je ne sais quoi, so to speak, that the original ones had. And when I've read Donnie Darko, I mean, it screamed to me like, wow, this is an episode of the original Twilight Zone, but in movie form, modern day. And that was literally my initial reaction.
Yeah, I could totally see that for sure.
I was really excited about it. And I really didn't think I was going to get the part because it was written for someone who was 6 feet tall and blonde, and I'm 5'9", and just a little off blonde at the moment. So I figured, I love the script so much, and I just really thought it was so cool, and I love the characters, and I decided to, if they were going to audition me, I was going to go in and I was going to give it my all.
Yeah.
And probably read it another 7 or 8 times just to make sure I had a really good hold on what Frank meant to me anyways. So at least when I auditioned, I still specifically remember going in the audition and they were like, so obviously you have questions? And I was sort of like, no, I don't have any questions actually. I just want you guys to know one thing. I totally get it. And they were just sort of like, all righty, so let's do it. And the audition scene was when I run Gretchen over.
Yeah.
When he is just a normal kid. So by doing the back work and reading the script and, I don't know still to this degree if a lot of people are aware that I'm Donnie's sister's boyfriend.
Okay, I don't, like I said, it was so long ago that I saw it and I was just reading.
So when Maggie gets dropped off in the very beginning of the movie, it's an orange Trans Am that drops her off.
Yeah.
And that's my
same Trans Am. Yeah.
So it's not necessarily that I'm a supernatural character, but I'm closer to Donnie than the audience is shown.
Right.
The audience realizes when she comes in the phone and talks about how he told the teacher to insert the timeline in her anus, and how they're like his dad wants to buy him a moped. She's talking to me on the phone.
Oh, yeah.
Or to my character, I should say.
Right, yeah.
She was talking to just nothing that day at filming.
Right.
Because I was off shooting something else that day. But so there's a lot of really kind of cool clues that are happening. The FAA, guy, the FBI officer, the Men in Black, who's there when the jet engine gets lifted up. And then he shows up while Donnie's trying to kiss Gretchen, but she wants the moment to be special, and he's that smoking jogger. Then it cuts later on, and he's at the Halloween party with everybody, and he's watching Donnie. Huh. He's watching Donnie through that whole movie. Donnie is being watched by a Men in Black.
Oh, that's really interesting.
So yeah,
I'm going to go back and like really give it like another once over, because I remember liking it, but it was just like years ago that I watched it.
There's so many, because I love the story so much. Even before we started filming, I was, like I said, I kept going over the script over and over, and there's really so many kind of magical elements in there like that. The whole grandma death thing, and being a nun and then leaving the convent and then writing the book, the philosophy of time travel, and her whole life changes. And she saw the future. She's been going back, oh, grandma's going to go get mail. Oh, wait, she just checked it. No, wait, she's going back. There could be mail. And she gets back and it's like, oh, sorry, grandma, no mail. And then Sue Stone ad-libs, somebody really ought to write that bitch. And I know, it's so fucking funny when he says that. And I know when he first shot that scene, they got upset at him for cursing, for saying that.
Yeah.
But come on, I mean, it's Donnie and the kids and the Smurfs and Papa Smurf jacking off and you can't say that. So really it's kind of this nice little bookend to that scene. And of course, as we all know, it made the film.
Right. That's always a cool thing. How was it? Is it significantly more difficult acting in something that like completely covers you, like that rabbit suit?
Quite the opposite, actually. It almost feels like cheating. It's what the
really
the honest response I had to that is, I'm including myself when I first saw it, was wow, they really, when you add all the elements to it, it really makes it something. Because it wasn't even as complicated. I think, at least when Peter Mayhew was playing Chewbacca, he spoke like, that old man's mad. And they just, but, there was this whole thing of, I had to scream through the mask so Jake could hear me, especially from the distance. So it was really, sort of like, will in 28 days. 6 hours, and I mean, and I'm muffled. So I'm kind of far. So he has to credit to him for having to memorize and hit those cues on the muffles, because I was trying to be as clear as I can, which is difficult through that suit.
Sure.
So in a lot of ways, it was just beyond that. It was just sort of showing up, and it's the easiest job I've ever had, I think. It was just so cool because I didn't have hair and makeup when I showed up in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
Like, hey, how's everybody doing? And then go sit down on the chair while they're filming. And then they bring the suit out and they're like, okay, you ready? I'm like, okay, yeah, get in the suit. And they suit me up. And then I get in and then they go stand me on my mark. And, if I have the lines, I scream through it. But I'm not really moving around, walking or doing any of those things. So there's not really marks or anything to hit. I'm just standing there.
Huh.
So you just stand there and say the lines through the mask, which, of course, I went in 6 months later. And Richard Kelly and I kind of came up with that cadence, and we found that on the spot. It's kind of like this interview, like let's find what Frank is.
Right.
We had ideas, but let's find it, and that's what you hear in the film, which is really, I think, I did a whisper of "Wake up, Donnie, I want you to follow me," and I did one regular "Wake up, Donnie, I want you to follow me," and then I did one kind of like "Wake up, Donnie, I want you to follow me," and then they take it and they split it. So all these different tools, including one, "Wake up, Donnie, I want you to follow me." And I think there was no kind of really loud one. It was just the medium, the low, and the whisper. And that's the one they split into maybe 5 or 6 levels. And that's what you hear until I take the mask off, and then you just hear my normal voice.
Yeah.
Without the mask. But it really was, it was fun to sit there and, okay, Jimmy, we need you, mask on, turn your head to the left. Straight, turn your head to the right, look straight, look up, look straight, perfect cut. I'm like, man, this job's amazing. I mean, and I guess, the backstory to that is too, which is pretty cool. I know at one point when I finished the audition, they said, okay, because you only see his face a couple times in the movie.
Yeah.
You see it when he takes the mask off and he's missing the eye in the theater. You see it when he runs over Gretchen. Mm-hmm. And he's just the boyfriend who went to get beer, who went driving drunk, and he ran over the girl because he was drunk.
Right.
And there's the very ending scene where it's the flashback. Donnie goes back to his room. The jet engine falls. We go back to our normal lives, to the alternate reality. He saves the world. Mm-hmm. He saves the universe. And we all, and when it cuts back, you see me with both eyes kind of touch my, like I recall that maybe I'm missing it. Like all of us are going, you see Patrick Swayze's character, Jim Cunningham, crying and tortured, and you see Mrs. Palmer
and like two people like wave to each other that don't, and like two people wave to each other that don't know each other but kind of remember knowing each other. That kind of
the mom and Gretchen.
Yeah.
And it's so here's a funny thing too. So there was a scene we never shot where I actually have my arm around Maggie's character, Jake's sister, comforting her. because I was her boyfriend.
Right. Yeah.
But we got, which I think makes sense, that maybe that would make me seem or appear a little bit more supernatural than I was, because I am just manipulated dead and he's manipulated living. But it really is, I'm not this supernatural, as you know, character. The bunny is my Halloween costume that he shot me in.
Right. Yeah.
That's what I manifest in the Halloween costume. So it's like kind of going through this journey, even before we film, and figuring all this stuff out so that it becomes as clear as possible, so there's no confusion when you're filming what you're doing and where you're going, with the exception of not knowing exactly what Frank's voice would be like in the future.
Now going from something so heady and complex to something so more or less bang bang shoot 'em up to like Independence Day, like, do you like that kind of trying a little bit of everything, or do you have a preference to one or the other?
No, it's more now than ever. I think it's interesting you say that, because when I shot Independence Day, I actually was shooting another movie at the exact same time. So I was shooting a movie with Greg Araki called Nowhere, which was a $1.5 million movie.
Yeah.
And I'd shoot for a week in Los Angeles playing, the whole movie's about disenfranchised youth doing drugs, having sex with each other, all the wrong stuff. And then I would get off of this little tiny indie movie because I started making movies with Greg. And Roland was quite a fan of Greg's films, which is, fortunate for me, helped me get cast in Independence Day.
Yeah.
But I would take my earrings out, switch my part, get on a plane, fly to Utah, shoot the stuff in Utah with Randy Quaid and my brother and sister, finish out the week there, come back, put my earrings back in, flip my part. So there's actually one point, because I know Greg got mad, because after being in the desert for 5 days, there's a scene in Nowhere where I kind of have that farmer's tan from the tank top my character wore. And that's because I was filming in Independence Day for the week before that. So at one point I don't have the tan mark, and the movie's all in one day. And then I show up from the side.
It's all tan. Oh, that's funny.
Makeup on me. It was really great that they made it work out. But, I did that for a couple of weeks. I went LA, Utah, wrapped out Utah, came to LA, finished Nowhere for 2 more weeks, wrapped that movie, then went to the stages and finished Independence Day in the next 4 or 5 weeks, I think.
It's funny. Like, that's the way I love to work on projects. Like, I love to have multiple things going at once, because I feel like I get bored easy. Like,
it was, it was really kind of incredible, as I thought, okay, this is going to be, and I've since made a few movies at the same time since then, and I don't have a problem with it. And that really sort of sorted it out for me, because it was very early in my career, and, and I'm still in the stages where I'm still learning, I'm still perfecting my craft, although I'm a lot more confident now than I was back then. Mm-hmm. I have a few more things under my belt. So, I wanted to tackle other genres, and I, was a bit nervous about it in my early 20s. So it was as fun as it was to go from indie drama, or kind of these indie kind of really weird movies, to these huge studio movies, was really quite fun. And I think after that, I felt so fortunate, because I got to work with Doug Liman right after Swingers on Go. And I got to work with James Marantino on SLC Punk. I felt like I was just movie after movie. I was just getting lucky, movie after movie, where it came up as I kind of got older. So by the end of the 90s, when I started to get into my early 30s, I didn't look like my early 30s. I didn't play early 30s. So I got in this weird, really in between stage for about 10 or 15 years. I'm just coming out of it now, to be quite honest, which is strange. But what I did was I started doing romance, sci-fi, horror comedy, horror rom-com comedy, anything I could get my hands on to keep my craft sharp, but also to just develop it, to sharpen it. We're talking here, which is, I think, incredible about all the things you do. And I really meant that, because being an artist and being a creative, there's never an end to it. There's no end to learning. There's no end to finding new avenues to express yourself. And really the idea or the hope for people like us, no matter what that art is, what you're creating, is to continue creating and find those things that inspire you. And for me, I find it in doing things that, I don't normally want to do that, or maybe just kind of I'm a little scared to do that. Then I know I have to do it. Should be nothing I can't do. Mm-hmm. Especially if I'm not busy. I don't have an excuse to not develop my art with other people who are passionate about developing theirs, in all genres, in all walks of art, and anything, no matter where it lies. So whether it's a film short or a video, or I'm working on this documentary now about Kim Kahana, this legendary stuntman who'd been around since the days of Lee Marvin. I got out of, he was picking pineapples in a plantation during Pearl Harbor when he was a kid. Didn't really know his parents. Stowed away to the mainland a few times before he was able to come over in 18 or 19. And he joined the army and he got shipped to Korea, did the Korean War, which was a pretty dark period in his life. Got out of that and wanted to get into stunts, and he did. And he became this legendary stuntman that all the greats have learned from, that he learned from the greats at the time. So a lot of the union rules or safety rules, safety cables and flipping cars and whatnot, all those things they didn't have unions back then. Right. They certainly didn't have safety rules or harnesses. And so he's one of the people responsible for bringing a lot of that to the forefront. Before we had all those things, one of the stuntmen was the first person to do all these things. And it's funny because, there's a scene we reenact about when he was doing, Cool Hand Luke with Paul Newman. And you guys, we got to know Paul Newman a little bit because he was an extra in the movie. Paul Newman was asking about acting. He's like, well, I'm really a stuntman, but don't tell him I'm a stuntman, because back then you got paid for being an extra. You didn't really get paid for being a stuntman.
Oh, really?
Used and abused and thrown. Yeah, it's really. And so this man is one of the people responsible for changing that. So he had to hide the fact that he was a stuntman so he could get paid as a stuntman and an extra. But he got paid as an extra who did the stunts instead of just a stuntman who only got paid.
Oh, yeah.
And he ended up making more money back then. And this is, that's the 60s. And he ended up being like, he did this thing with Richard Donner, like, hey, Chongo.
Oh, Danger Island.
Danger Island, he's Chongo.
Shut up, really?
So that whole thing where he goes,
yeah.
Like all those things, there's a whole piece that we filmed, which is true. When he was talking to, Paul Newman about it, he's like, so you want to act? He's like, no, I don't really like to learn lines. I just would rather make bird noises. And he goes, what? He's like, yeah. Like what he does in Danger Island, because he doesn't want to learn dialogue. He doesn't like learning dialogue.
That's so funny. I literally posted a picture on my timeline on Facebook yesterday of the banana splits, which is what Danger Island was part of. Just randomly, no explanation. And it was really interesting just to see the people who got it and didn't get it. And there were so many Danger Island references because that was like the best part of the show.
It was, I tell you what, I'm elated that you, not only that you know it, but you did a piece on it, because it is a part of history, I think that whole thing of him sliding down, he made all those up. They did those kind of things, rigs didn't exist. He made those rigs up for Danger Island. He got cast as a stuntman because he was really good friends with Richard Donner. As Chongo, but he was a stuntman.
Yeah, and that's like early Donner career, like
very, very early Donner. So we did reenactments of Chongo and Danger Island, and with Richard Donner describing the scenes of, how he was going to do the slide down and how Richard had to get it. You got to get it. 'Cause I'm only going to do it once. You better get it the first time.
Right.
I'm only doing it once. So really,
what's the name of the documentary? Just
right now it's called the Kahana Project.
Okay.
And still in the midst of working on it, but it's there's a 60, 70 years to cover here. Time with Charles Bronson. He was stuntman for Charles Bronson in those early Bronson movies before even Death Wish back in the 60s and 70s. He's got, I think it's the only stunt school right now, which is this shirt's from when I went to go film the documentary a few months ago, the Kim Kahana Stunt School. And it's a whole school on learning how to do stunts. You move in there for 4 to 6 weeks and take the stunt course.
Do you get to do your own stunts, or is it just an interest from being in the films?
Well, what's funny is when I was young, because I did gymnastics and I did martial arts when I was younger. So, for instance, I think I've done martial arts in a few movies now. In the 90s, I hid it because I didn't want people to know, because I didn't think that the martial arts movies were as good. I'm like, the days of Bruce Lee are over. Sorry.
Yeah, but some of them are really good in a bad way.
They're great in the bad way, but I was trying not to do that. Yeah. Where now I would do those in a heartbeat because I just have a different perception of it.
Right.
I definitely had more of an ego, I think, as a kid, which got in the way of my artistic growth, to be quite honest with you. Not that I don't feel that I haven't grown or I didn't learn from that, but I think that was the most important thing I learned is artistic growth, is to go out and, it's okay to like these things and not worry about what people thought. And that's kind of the wonderful thing once you get in your 30s and your 40s, you don't care what people
It's think. So liberating to be like, I like Miley Cyrus. I don't care. I'm not trying to impress anybody.
Cyrus, and I don't care what you think, and I don't care what you like. You know what I mean? I care
exactly
about what I like, what inspires me. Because as long as what you like inspires you, why would I care?
I love how you're I love how you talk about continuing to learn all through your life. We had Kate Linder, who was an actress on The Young, or is an actress on The Young and the Restless, and she's played the same character for like pushing 40 years. I think it's well over 30. And when we had her, she talked about going to class, and I'm like, "Oh, are you teaching?" She goes, "No." And I was just kind of like taken aback, where I'm like, "You've been playing the same character. Like, why are you still?" She's like, "Because you can always learn something." And I'm like, "Oh shit, yeah, of course you can." Like, it just like I love that mentality of you never stop learning.
From people that are pros that have been doing it longer than you, to contemporaries, to people that have just stepped on the set for the first time, there's always something magical to learn and pick up. And if you're open to those things, as an artist, you'll grow exponentially.
Yeah.
And that's, as you know, because you've experienced it and your group has experienced, that's the joy of it, really. It's not about, I kind of have had a few conversations as of recent, which is, it's really interesting and flattering, like, what's that end all be all role? And what's that movie you're looking for? And I'm like, well, I've kind of done that, and they've kind of come and go, and then I've had an end all be all character that I thought I'd really like to play this. And I read the script and I'm like, this is horrible. Then I've gotten a script where I'm like, I really don't want to play a character like this. And you read it and you're like, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
I have to do this. So then it's not about setting my eyes, So for me, it's interesting. It's just that perception, to hear that perception, because my perception is just so different. It lies on like, well, I'll know when I read it. I'm open to whatever you got. I'm not set on a particular character being the end all be all, because those end all be all movies, if you do it and it comes out well and it does well, that's wonderful. Okay, what next? You know what I mean? Because you got to get up and get out and do things the next day, and it's wonderful to have those things. But if you look at a body of work, it's something I learned from Roland Emmerich, believe it or not, and Dean Devlin. And I use this as a foundation for my career. And I've told this story over and over again. And I know maybe some people think I'm a bit nuts, but I really think this is profound. And it's profound when it comes to, artistic growth and artistic integrity and artistic morals, and really just being artistic in general. And we had done Independence Day, and it was such a successful movie. And I became pretty good friends with them at the time. They were going to do Godzilla.
Yep.
And every time they do movies, Stargate, Independence Day, Godzilla, they leave the country so they don't hear the press. They don't hear whether the movie's doing good or bad. They separate themselves from that, and then they just get the news later.
Yeah.
So while we were sitting there for Independence Day, it was mind blowing, like biggest movie at the time in 10 days to 100 million. It kept breaking these records. We're just like, oh my gosh, we're just in Mexico trying to forget about it. This is great. So the next time I didn't work on Godzilla with them, but I was, being friends, I celebrated with the release of it in Mexico. Much different this time. This time the reviews were coming in, and I remember, and I'll never forget this, the sun's coming down. We're in Puerto Vallarta. It's beautiful, the Bay of Banderas. And it's on this deck with the pool made of stone, and Roland has a cigar, and Dean's really, and I could feel it, it was kind of heavy. It was hurt, it's like, wow, all these people were kind of like tearing our movie apart, tearing us apart. These people loved us just not 2 years ago. Now these same people trying to bury us, because you know how nasty some people can be, especially the mainstream press.
Oh, for sure.
And Roland just looked at him, which is brilliant. He goes, Dean, we don't profess to be geniuses. We did Universal Soldier, did good, did Stargate, it did better. We did Independence Day. That was a big success, and then we failed. But we did the best we could. You always do the best you could. It's not about succeeding or failing. It's about doing the best you can every time. So over time, when you look back on your career and you in the present and you move forward, you can truly call yourself a craftsman. And it hit me. That's what I want to be. I don't want to be an actor or a star. I mean, I do want to be an actor. I don't want to be a star. I want to be a craftsman. I want to be an artist. I want to learn about myself and the world around me and people around me and connect in the way that music and movies and art and books and all those things have always enticed me and drawn me and inspired me and connected me to things that I felt completely shut off. And as you know, and I think I speak with kindred spirits again. And so I was so excited to you say the things you said about the group's artistic, process, because it's very much mine, going out there and expanding it and trying new things and just expressing yourself, because it all culminates together in this lifelong sort of odyssey and journey. And then that's when it becomes incredible. You have those moments and you have those ups and you have those downs, but then that's when you look at it as a whole, you're like, man, that roller coaster was awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? I've recently had a that roller coaster experience. And I always say, like, everything we do is almost always by accident. It's never by design. Someone will pitch an idea and we just automatically say yes, usually before they're done pitching the idea. But now we're doing comedy shows and I'm like, well, the next logical thing is let's do a music show. And we did a music show and venue was phenomenal. The sound was amazing. The bands were great. And like 30 people showed up. And I'm being super generous to myself. And it was just like for days, I was like inconsolable. And then it was just like a matter of sitting down with someone else who ran similar events and just kind of being like, yeah, man, they don't all work out. And, sometimes the crowd is going to tell you what they want to see and you got to listen and figure out where to go next. And if you believe in that band and that venue and what you're doing, you just try again. Yeah, but it's that, up and down. And then we'll do another event and, comedy show will sell out in like 2 weeks and, 3 weeks before the show actually happens. And it's just like, okay, this is, it takes a different mindset to do this sort of thing opposed to someone who wakes up and does their office job. And
because you put yourself out there, and if you fail, as opposed to the office job, who cares? You go home, you clock out. Who cares about the office? But when you put in your heart and soul into this, and someone, clips you, you take that home with you.
Oh yeah, you're like, this is my fault, and everyone's like, it's not your fault. You're like, no, you don't understand.
It's like a weight.
Yeah. And but it is. You're right. It's that. It's kind of those highs and lows, and you try to look back and look at all the fun stuff and cool things that you got to do and cool people you get to talk to, and
also those things that, so what seemed as a weight first, what I carried as a weight, usually I was able to cut loose in the learning process because there was something that I learned along the way that I hadn't known before any of these negative situations that popped up. So therefore, what had seemed, at least, and were negative at the time, to get something positive out of it was sort of like walking away with a tool. Mm-hmm. So it didn't work because I didn't have the tool at the time. But since it's broke, and then I felt, and I broke my ankle, my ankle's got a cast on it. Now I'm walking forward, but you know what? I'm walking away with that tool.
Yeah.
So when this pops up again, it's going to be something else that breaks my ankle. It's not going to be this.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I'm just going to wrap it up and I'm going to keep going.
Yeah. And I mean, we learn more from failure.
That's where we learn, really. Yeah. And that's where I'm, it took a long time, especially in my 20s, having a bit of an ego, I think, as we all do, even though you're like, I don't have an ego, I'm fighting it, especially when you're younger, it's more difficult. But once I was able to kind of begin to learn to shed that, that's when it became like, oh no, this is just about growth. Like all these things that I thought were these end all be all moments came and went. And I really was like, now what?
Yeah. Well, it's that, is it Steve Martin in Parenthood? I can't remember who says it in Parenthood, but they're like, you never get to spike the football in life. There's no end to the game. Like
it keeps going. There is no, and that's what the wonderful thing is, because it keeps going. That means that those failures aren't really failures. They're stepping stones that take you to the next level.
Yeah. I agree 100%. And it means any bad thing means what you want it to mean. And I'm going to kind of bring the tone down a little bit. So my father passed away 18 years ago in 18 years ago in December. I mean, it was a long time ago. But I made the conscious decision where I'm like, I don't want to be one of those people that it was around Christmas, to get super bummed out because of missing him. And of course I miss him, but I made the conscious decision that every year on the anniversary of his passing, I drink a shot of Southern Comfort, because that's what he drank, and toast him. And then I spend however long it takes me, and I text every person that means something to me and say, I love you. You're important to me. Raise a glass to my dad. And so I've taken something that is a tragic memory and made it a really positive thing in my life, because God forbid something happened to me, I know the people who are important to me know.
And that's, I've been dealing with a lot of death in the last couple of years myself. And I think, that's, if it's anything, because one of them was someone who, was close, and I'd lost touch over about 10 years, and that's sort of the thing that happens, in your 20s. It's like 2 years is kind of becomes 5 years in your 30s, becomes 10 years in your 40s. And yeah, ended up, we just barely reconnected, but he ended up passing. And when he ended up passing, it's okay. It's, it's,
I knew I was going to bring it down. I didn't think I was going to bring it down that much.
No. Because here's the amazing thing, because I want to bring it up.
Yeah.
So he was this musician I made friends with, a couple back in the 90s, named the Jazz Butcher. Mm-hmm. And I had been off Facebook for 10 years. I only signed back in because during the pandemic, he had started doing live shows on Facebook.
Yeah.
So I only signed in for him and then sort of reconnected with him. But before that, because he wasn't on Facebook when I was on Facebook, around 2009, 2010, and I got off in 2012. I got off for 10 years.
Yeah.
And after he passed, all of a sudden, everyone that he'd played with, everyone that I had met over the years in the 90s and the 2000s, I'd seen at shows that I lost touch with, all of a sudden we've all reconnected, and we're all now closer in a way that we've ever been. His passing brought us together in very much the same way. We're not going to let those wasted opportunities keep us from communicating and connecting with each other anymore.
And that's a really beautiful way of keeping his memory alive, I think.
I think so too. And it's like, I was going to leave after, I'm like, when he does these, when it goes back and he finishes the Fishy Mansion shows live, I'm not going to be on here anymore. And when he passed, I was like, so there was such an outpouring of love and support. I became enamored with the community that I'm only on there. So I'm, if people want to see, I'm just really bad at social media, but I do kind of keep up Instagram once a month or every 2 months. And same thing with Twitter, but Facebook, I don't do it all except for now the Facebook group. So I got off for 10 years. I came back on for Pat Fish, the Jazz Butcher, and I remain on there for his fans. Then, band members that he's played with over the years that I've become friends with. And so now this community is like family.
Yeah, that's amazing. We're kind of getting towards the end, so let's do.
Sorry about that. I'm a talker.
I told you this. It goes wherever it goes, man. That's the best part. That's what I love about this. Is I interviewed a comic book creator years ago, Ben Goldsmith, and at the end he's like, "You never asked me who my favorite comic book writer is," and I'm like, "I don't care. Like that's not what this is about. Like this is like getting a genuine." Every interviewer is going to ask him that, like a genuine peek at who you guys are. And, but we do have to kind of, make the PR people happy. So what do you have coming up? I know you got a couple movies this year. So
I do. Yeah. Thank you for asking. I have been fortunate to be busy right before the pandemic. And then right after lockdown lifted, I started working again. So, at the moment I have a film, called I Challenger, directed by Paul Boyd, which, believe it or not, we were at the Film Threat award this the other night, and we won. They have best indie film and best director and best film under
congrats.
100,000. And we won, which I'm very proud of, to be quite honest. But we won best "What the fuck is this movie even" of the year award. I could be more proud of him. Like that sounds like my resume.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that.
So we won that, and I'm very proud of it. It's on, it's available on streaming right now. Like I said, it's called I Challenger. Mm-hmm. I play this sort of 40-something-year-old stoner gamer who sells weed to underage kids and is trying to find direction in his life. And he becomes really good friends after a really bad failed Tinder date with a character played by a marvelous Margaret Cho, who leaves me tied up. One of my video game friends, I call him to come get me out, and it turns out to be, which is an incredible actor, Coy Stewart, turns out to be this 20-year-old kid. And so you figure out that I've been lying who I was online. He's lying who he was online. Margaret Cho and I were lying about who we were on. So everybody's catfishing each other.
Yeah, that's funny.
And trying to find the semblance through this, it's like a stoner comedy. He kind of convinces my character I need to find luck. So on a stoned, kind of tirade one night, I watch a bunch of YouTube videos and find these Russian burial videos where Russians were burying themselves for 24 hours for luck, and it was working. So I decide I'm going to bury myself underground for 24 hours with his help. And meanwhile, I have this massive crush on Tina Margarina's character, who sells me the weed that I sell to the kids from the shop.
Yeah.
And you realize I'm a bit oblivious to this possible blossoming romance with her because I'm just so singularly, caught up in my own melancholy.
Yeah.
And so needless to say, to cut a long story short, we decide to build something, bury myself for 24 hours underground, live stream it. If it gets lucky, we'll go viral to change everything. So who cares about luck? And then let's just say it doesn't go the way we planned. Hence, I don't want to spoil the movie, but that's,
of course. Yeah.
And I think it's got I'm very proud of it. I think it's got a lot of heart, it's certainly a little bit different, but something I think most people can identify with, whether you're a stoner or not.
Yeah.
Nice little thing. It's got a lot of heart in it. There's a nice little, curveball in there. I think that what got me reading it when I was, going over it for the first time and thought, like, I loved it. I mean, I liked it, but now I love it. Like, I have to play this character.
No,
and let me cut this, guys. I know you have some time. We don't have much time left. Another one's Martin Landau's last movie called Without Ward.
Mm-hmm.
I'd done this movie 10 years ago that was sort of this futuristic film set in the dystopian future where half the world goes under this drug developed by Martin Landau to live out their wildest fantasies. He plays Ward. The movie's called Without Ward. And 20 years into this wonder drug, it stops working. He kills himself and half the world wakes up. Now, since this, during this time, the government has moved from democracy, republics to contractualism. So the contracts that everybody signed when they went to sleep, because they were never supposed to wake up.
Yeah.
What they're stuck to. So they don't know what to do with literally half the world waking up. So they put them on house arrest under penalty of death. Cut to 2 years later in this one particular family that we're all living together in. And hence the kind of hell of being locked up with each other and possibly a permanent lockdown with no.
Oh God, this is like too close to home.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the kicker of this story is played by Michael Gladys, who plays my son, who ends up getting naked in the window, falling in love with Alexis DeZenia's character on the other side of the window, where they both fall in love. And through masturbating to her across the window, he ends up, because I don't want to spoil this, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, but he ends up saving the world. And so if we can all imagine, and I think that this falls into all categories, into all sexualities, who doesn't love to masturbate? So on that degree, you think about it as masturbate. He masturbates and saves the world from this lockdown. For the rest of it, they're going to have to tune in, but that's Without Ward. And then the final
sounds like another fucked up movie.
Yeah, you know me. I only like to do the best. What the fuck is this movie even?
Yeah,
that's just my forte. I'm proud to say. The last one that is currently out right now is called The Runner, and it's a short movie based on the album, or not based. It's filmed for the album by the band Boy Harsher, which is this sort of horror horror psychological thriller about this woman on the run for various reasons, society, abusers. I have a very small part, but because I'm a massive fan of this band, and they went and honestly shot this really cool little 25-30 minute movie. It's available on Shudder now, so it's available.
Cool.
You can watch it on Shudder. It's called The Runner by Boy Harsher. I'm very proud of it, and it's very cool, and it's very out there, and the music is, of course, brilliant.
Awesome. I'll have to check that out. Man, this was an absolute pleasure. I'm so glad that your PR person came across our inbox. This was a lot of fun.
I'm honestly, I'm always flattered, honestly, that anybody wants to speak to me. So, Andy, I really appreciate it. I got to say, someone else really appreciates it too.
Oh, no way.
So Frank says hi, everybody.
Is that the Frank the Bunny
costume? It's a copy of the exact mold. The one that I wore, there's 3 of those. So I'll give everyone the laydown on those real quick before we go. One is chromed and was given as a gift to Nancy Uvonen, who was the producer with Drew Barrymore and Flower Films, who helped make Donnie Darko possible. Yeah. So when we finished the movie, the 3 screen-worn masks that were made at the time, there's more, of course, than mine from the mold, and a few others. One of them was chromed and was, of course, given as a gift, as a wrap gift to Nancy. Yeah. One was sold to Kirk Hammett from Metallica, who has it.
Not surprising at all.
And the third one, my friend Jack Morrissey has, and he just recently donated that and the entire suit that I wore to the Motion Picture Museum.
Oh, very cool.
Academy, basically. So there should be something in the press in the next month or two about that. Wow, thanks for reminding me. I forgot about that. So there will be some press about that. I guess we're gonna, being immortalized at the Academy is quite an honor, especially for someone who doesn't come from mainstream film very often. Who's mostly the what the fuck is this movie even kind of guy.
That's awesome. We'll have to keep our eyes open for that. That'll be cool. And you have to do something for me. You have to promise me that when your documentary is ready, that you come back on and we talk about
I promise you. Well, I would be honored to come back and talk to you, Andy. Thank you for asking.
Because I'm very excited to see that, because Danger Island was such a key thing in my childhood that I'm really eager to see this.
Hopefully, let me see if I can't I know he's cutting a trailer, but you'll see footage that I reenact that whole
slide down,
zip line slide and bird calls, and it was an honor to meet him, and it's an honor to still be working with him because he's 92.
Yeah. Does he still do stunts?
He doesn't do stunts anymore, but to see a 92-year-old man still walking around and having his vodka martini once every day at 4 p.m. and still in great condition done for his age. Yeah. It's impressive.
That's awesome.
He still runs and teaches at stunt school though. So when I did stunts, because I got the opportunity to do, so that going back really quick, we're talking about stunts. I wanted to be a stuntman. I stumbled into acting. So I usually do my own stunts as long as they, as much as they afford me.
Yeah.
So that it was a joy to go with Kim, and Kim, of course, let me do all my own stunts in this, playing him.
That's
That was one of the kind of the pluses about it.
Outstanding. Jim, again, thank you so much for being on. To our listeners, thanks for listening as always, and we'll catch you guys again next week.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great one, Andy. Thank you.
And thanks for checking out the show today, listeners. If you enjoyed the content today, you can go over to patreon.com/Inebri-art to support the show. You can join over there for just a few dollars a month and help us provide this fun content that you just checked out. You can also email us at Inebri-art.com with your questions, complaints, and concerns, or you can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art or at Inebri-art6 on Instagram. And also don't forget to check out our other shows, Bar Talk Podcast, Old Colony Cast, Inebri-art, and all the other shows on the Inebri-art Network, which you can find at Inebri-art.com. Thanks again for listening.